So we're going to tell you the Bible story today. Okay.
I can't see.
Called a blind woman.
Can you help me, Jesus? I can't walk.
Called a lame man.
Heal me, Jesus, please. He can't hear.
Called a deaf man's friend.
Touch him, Jesus, and make him well.
There were people everywhere crowding around Jesus.
I can't see.
Said a little girl to her mother.
There are too many people in the way. I can't move.
Said a little boy, said her little brother.
We're all squashed in here.
What did you say? Oh, sorry, that was you.
What did you say?
Said Dad.
I can't hear. The crowd is so noisy. Excuse me.
Said Mum to one of Jesus' friends.
We're wondering if Jesus could pray for our children.
Are they sick?
Ask a friend. No, are they sick?
Asked a friend of Jesus.
No, we just want Jesus to pray for them and to bless them.
Jesus is far too busy to bother with children,
said Jesus' friend. The mum and dad and the children were very sad.
Does this mean we can't see Jesus?
Asked the little girl as they turned away. But before her mum could answer, another voice called out.
Wait!
It was the voice of Jesus.
Bring your children here,
he said. The crowd watched as they moved forward. Jesus picked up the little boy and the little girl and sat them on his knees. He said to the people,
listen, I want everybody to listen, particularly my friends. You must never keep the children from me. They are as important as everyone else, and I want to be their friend too. Don't you see? God wants us all to be like these children.
Then Jesus prayed for the children, blessing them, and sent them back to their parents.
Children learn what they live. If children live with criticism, they learn to condemn. If children live with hostility, they learn to fight. If children live with shame, they learn to feel guilty. If children live with tolerance, they learn to be patient. If children live with encouragement, they learn confidence. If children live with praise, they learn to appreciate. If children live with fairness, they learn justice. If children live with security, they learn to have faith. If children live with approval, they learn to accept themselves. If children live with acceptance, affirmation, and friendship, they learn to find love in the world.
I want you to think back to your childhood, and some of you have still, you can think back to when you were little and what things have changed since then. What was happening at the time? Now, a lot of us have been around for a long time, so things have, looking back takes us back quite a long way. When I was at primary school and before, I lived in post-war England. Bread and milk and coal was delivered by horse and cart. And as a child going to school, we still had rationing. Now, do you know what rationing is? Yep, you do. Okay. And we had blackout curtains. Do you know what blackout curtains were? Well, to keep out the light so that the enemy couldn't see where the houses were, we had to have blackout curtains to keep out the light. But of course, post-war, there wasn't any material. There was nothing to replace them with. So we still had blackout curtains until I was about 8 or 9, when then finally material to make pretty curtains became available. And we had bomb sites. We had no car. Most families didn't have a car. The phone was in a phone box, a red phone box down the street. We didn't have a refrigerator. And the first time I watched a television was in 1953, and I watched the coronation. There were about 30 of us crammed into a tiny living room with a 7-inch or 12-inch black and white fuzzy screen. My experience of church was a bit sparse. I didn't go to Sunday school. I did go to church sometimes at Christmas not often. Easter was usually. Harvest was yes, if we could make it. And the church fete was always. So, the only people that I knew that were not English was one man whose name was Mr. Turkazoo, and he was a Greek Cypriot. And everybody else was white and English when I grew up. So a very different world to what we experience today. I went searching for a book yesterday that I kept from my childhood. It's the Golden Book of Astronomy, published in 1955 when I was 12, just starting high school. I loved this book because it opened my mind to a whole new understanding of the planet that we live on, the way that it works in relation to the sun and the moon and all the wonders of the universe. And it says on the back of this book, "This magnificent book explains simply and clearly the marvelous phenomena of the heavens, as well as gravity and seasons and tides. It includes the way in which stellar distances are measured, the latest theories about the beginning of the solar system, and the possibilities of space travel." So it was a bit different then. At the same time as I got that book, I got my hymn book. It was a little school hymn book, and it was my introduction to the Christian faith. In the Church of England, I went to a Church of England grammar school. And a lot of what I learned was about doctrine and what I had to believe in order to be a good person. And I did the best I could, but I didn't have the courage to disagree, and I wanted to fit in, so I never asked questions. But there were lots of things that I loved. I loved the smell of the candles and the look of the candles. And I loved the smell of the beeswax that polished the pews and the communion table, or altar, as it was called in the Anglican Church. And the mystery and the incense and the quiet prayer and the sense of the sacred. So although I didn't understand everything, there was something in the worship that gathered me up. And I still have my hymn book. I got it out yesterday. I can't sing many of the words in the hymns these days. My theology and our language has changed so much. But let's fast forward 60 years or so, and a bit more maybe, to today. And let's think about the world that the children today, our children and our grandchildren experience. We can travel across the world by air in a day, if we keep going. We have computers and technology which have transformed our communications and almost every other part of our everyday life. Young people and children learn in different ways. They learn how to use their computers. They learn to ask questions. They learn how to research and find out things for themselves. And they grow up in a multicultural society. And I don't need to go on because you know it for yourselves. You know where we live now and the complexity and the wonderful diversity of the community in which we live. Our understanding of the planet Earth and our dependence on it has changed. And we know that we are connected to all of life on Earth. And science has helped us to understand not just this universe, but the cosmos. That, I believe, means multiple universes. And we know that we are a living part of it in this particular moment. And the place of our church in society has changed. We know from the statistics that there are more people who identify as SBNR. Now, I know there's a couple of people here who know what that means. Jenny.
I did hear the fellow explain it.
Spiritual but not religious. SBNR. So there's this whole new way. Most institutional churches are struggling with dwindling resources and people. And we know what's happening. We've got the statistics to tell us what's happening. So I want to focus on two things. First is this: what can we give to these children as a Christian community to equip them for their future, which is still to unfold? We call ourselves Christians, and we can teach them about Jesus and the values that he taught and lived by. And it was wonderful to hear these young people today talking about their experience of coming together in a group to just experience what it means to be a Christian in the world in which they're growing up in, which is so different to what some of us grew up in. So we can teach them about Jesus and the values that Jesus taught us and that he lived by. Jesus taught us to love God and to love our neighbour. And we can explore with them what it might mean. We can allow them to ask questions. We can allow them to explore without fear or disparagement. We can encourage them to ask questions, to challenge, so that they actually own what they believe for themselves, what their faith in is for themselves. And we don't need to teach them to believe in creeds or dogma or a whole lot of unbelievable things. God is not a judge up in the sky. We know that now. God is the Spirit of love at loose in the world and in creation and in the human spirit. So for me, the image of God as a spirit of love is what I would want our young people to know. It's about love and compassion and freedom and joy and new life emerging. So I want our young people to know that they are loved in this community, to know that they are supported as they go forward into life in the future, and to be able to work out for themselves what it is that Jesus has taught them that's of value to them to take with them into the future. And Jesus taught us to love our neighbour, and that means our worldwide neighbours as well as our community. Jesus taught us to respect all people, to have compassion, kindness, honesty, and inclusivity. And we had that marvellous image on the screen last week of people coming together in community, in a corridor, in an apartment block, as they all brought out their tables and shared food together. And the song, "What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love." And the second thing is hope for the future. So first to nurture these children, to give them the very, very best that we can give them, but then also to hope for the future. The church that we know and love will probably be quite different for them as they move forward. And in 60 years' time, they might look back to this and say, well, wasn't that a place that nurtured us and set us forth? The Spirit is already in the future. The Spirit is always drawing us forward, and nothing ever stays the same. New life is always emerging, and so my hope will be that we, as a church community, will be open to how that may develop and what might happen. We may have to let go of a lot of things to give birth to what is new. But may we be that loving presence that enables the new thing to emerge, even if we may never see it and it's far beyond our imagination. And I'm quite certain that the Spirit of God is already at work in the future, that love, which cannot be contained and cannot be put out, is already in the future, calling us forward, as it has always done. And that the Spirit that was with Jesus will go forward into the future, just as it has come to us through 2,000 years. The God of love, the Spirit of love, will be in the world of these children today and into their future. Life always goes forward, and life nurtured in love is the best foundation for the future. And we remember those values of compassion and justice and kindness and respect are the values of the God of love, which we want to carry with us into the future. So we can choose to remain where we are, safe where we are, but frightened for the future, or we can trust this God who has brought us this far, who will lead us forward into the future, however that might be. So love the children now, support them now, and hope for the future, a future filled with love and goodness. And so today we give thanks for all of the children that are here with us, and also for those who can't be with us for one reason or another. So let's give these children a round of applause for what they mean to us.